I do. We
Good
are
morning.
live. All right. Good morning, guys. Quentin here, County of Stettler again. We're talking trees with Toso. I got my best friend here, Toso Bozic. We have had topics on pest and disease, what we're experiencing now, what we're going to experience in the future. We've talked about preparing trees for fall. We've talked about drought and care. Now let's get into the futuristic talks and let's start talking about planting fall trees, and then we'll get into some planting and preparing for spring at the next couple of sessions coming up. And we'll talk about planting trees in the spring. We'll talk about pruning, but right now let's focus on fall tree planting. Toso, good morning.
Good morning, Quentin. It is we had some rain here in Edmonton, and which is good. We need more rain, and I hope you guys get some rain as well. I will cover today about fall tree planting and some of the tricks and some of the things to pay attention if you decide to plant the trees on your property. And it's still time, actually, it's September, even all the way till mid-October, you can plant the trees. And how you're going to do it and what you have to pay attention, we're going to cover today topic on the fall tree planting. Quick about myself, I've been doing this for 27 years, and we are a consulting company that provides services to the range of the clients, and each client has a unique interest in trees, and we try to provide the best services for them. As I said, the range of the services include arborist services. We provide from tree risk hazard assessments to the pests and ID on the pest and pest problems. We have some services provided small towns such as tree inventory and management plan, natural forest management plan, and agroforestry systems, or shelter bots and windbreaks. Okay, as I always start in my presentation, here is some of the key messages. Prior, we're going to go into some of the details. Potted and burlap and basket trees are suitable for the fall planting prior to freezing. So having the small seedlings is not recommended to do in the fall. That's in the spring, and we're going to cover for the next session. Choose your planting stock appropriately. There is lots of varieties and shapes and sizes that you have a choice to plant the trees, but you have to do some little bit research and a little bit understanding what does it take. Inspect your trees. Lots of trees right now. If you go to any store, you're gonna see the discount, quite a bit significant discount. Inspect your trees for the roots, especially something called root bounding and root circling. Any damages from the hail or any insect damages or anything like that, and trunks. There's a few things you really have to pay attention when if you want to buy trees right now. Even though they are under the good discount, you still do the inspection. Use the right tree, right place, thinking for appropriate location. Lots of people, they buy the trees, they don't really pay attention of the where to plant the trees, and then down the road they run into lots of troubles on that tree. The most important is planting your trees properly. I'm going to cover, and I already covered in the previous presentations, how to plant tree properly. But again, if you buy the best tree and you don't plant them properly, it's really waste time and money. And on top of that, even if the tree survive, you're going to inherit lots of problems. So planting is extremely important. Water, we do have more rain in the fall than in the summertime, and then in the springtime, but you still need to do some watering. As I said, chips is one of the things that is must, and try to protect the roots and try to protect the moisture in on your trees. Staking might not be necessary. Most of the time, I recommend not to do that unless you really plant the trees that is totally exposed to the constant wind, and then you might do some proper staking. And again, in the fall, you don't do any fertilizer. Don't add any fertilizer to your fall planting whatsoever. It could be very detrimental to your trees. So let's go to some of the things. Why plant trees in the fall? It's those trees are already grown during this growing season. Many of them, again, either in nursery or they've been in the stores. They've been watered, they've been fertilized. they grow very well already for this growing season. So it gives that extra growing season for you to be in ahead of it. It's definitely helped the roots to establish before the freezing. So if you start planting now, you still have a month and a half of the adaptation for the roots to the new soil and new ground. And trees are ready to grow for the next growing season. That gives a little bit advantage than if you compare to the planting the trees in the springtime. Again, cooler temperature and fall rain allows trees to establish their roots. Usually they're cheaper stock, but again, you got to be careful exactly what you're buying. You don't want to buy just because it's cheap and really have a low survival rate of those cheap trees. And trees will be ready for winter dormancy. So many people ask me, if torture trees, if I plant now, are they going to be ready for winter? The trees is already slowly shutting down, so they will be ready for the winter dormancy. Now, for planting stock, you have basically two choices. One of the group is we call burlap and baskets. Those are big, we call caliper trees, and they come in this form that you have a burlap around the roots and you have a wire basket. This is in nursery settings. What they do, they take with a skid steer, lift this up and put on the truck and transport to the planting site. And again, there is a whole process of that. And I will a little bit explain to you what is the drawbacks of this type of trees to purchasing. They're quite expensive and they are ranging, depending on the species, from $250 to $400 or more if you plant a bigger one. And then you have a range of that we call potted stock, that is range from 10 gallons, 20 gallons, 30 gallons, and they're in the potted material, potted stock. And there is also a range of the shapes of the pots that those trees. Generally speaking, they are less expensive than the burlap and basket. And as I said, each of the has a pluses and minuses. Each of them again are range from $100 to $400, depending on the species and size. And again, those are a choice for your fall tree planting. You don't plant the small little seedlings or anything like that. You go with the bigger, larger, we call caliper stock. What does the caliper mean? It's just a clear explanation. In this example, what the nursery man is measuring, it's a 6 inch above the ground. And they said a 2 inch, 3 inch, or 4 inch caliper. That's what they measure. In the real forestry, what we do when you have a mature trees, we call diameter breast height, that we measure the trees at this height. And at this height, for example, this tree might be 3 inch, but on the bottom could be 4 or 5. And that's how they charging you. They're charging you what is the 6 or 12 inch above, above the surface of the soil. So that's why you see the 4 inch caliper, and this is where they measure 6 or 12 inch just above the ground. Now, here is some of the pluses and minuses of the potted versus burlap and basket. The Americans, US folks, they did a pile of studies on those two type of planting stock material. And what they come up with this phrase, big tree become little, little tree became a big. What they find out, doesn't matter which stock you use, the growth of the roots is almost identical. Doesn't matter year after year after year after year. But the potted roots is much more easier to adopt, and the growth compared to the size of the above ground or the trunk is much faster growth. And what it means, and here is under this right picture, there's a 2 caliper spruce trees. One is the only 1 inch in diameter, one is bought. The other one is 4 inch diameter. And so they planted at the same time, and you can see they measure the growth of the every year, 5 years down the road. Even though initially this 4 inch caliper tree was much bigger, almost 3 times bigger than the 1 inch caliper tree. But over the 5 years, the small little trees, because of the roots adaptation and developed the much faster roots, it became a much bigger than the one that you started with the 4-inch caliper trees. So again, this is a prime example of this saying that small tree, that what used to be again 1 inch, after 5 years is much bigger than the tree that was a 4-inch in caliper, became smaller. And again, that's directly related to the roots and root development. So the big caliper trees has a much harder time to develop the roots, which is basically supporting the above ground trunk and leaves and branches and everything else. So many times I ask people when they ask me which one I prefer with the small potted material, because one of the other reason is this. Here is again one of the amazing study that done by Nina Basiak from Cornell University. So what she did, she planted this oak tree over there at the same time, same nursery, row by row, side by side, and everything same condition, same watering, same maintenance, and everything else. So what she did, they come with a spade, and they took with a spade and cut the roots and put in burlap basket. And she pulled the trees. They're in the same size trees, same everything. She pulled the trees with the machine and looked in the roots that are not cut. As you can see on the left side, look at how much roots are in the burlap and the basket. And this is how much is really roots on the tree that was in nursery and basically dug up, and we call bay roots. You can see the huge difference. This tree on the right side has 100 times, in my opinion, better chance to adapt, to survive. And look at the root biomass. All of those are fine little roots, which is absorbing the water and nutrients and provide a life to the trees. And if you look this same biomass on the burlap basket, and that's the big difference. When you take a burlap basket, 80% of the roots, or sometimes even 90% of the root system is gone. And you plant this compared to this, and you're going to have a much harder time for this one to really, has to grow all of those little tiny roots, has to adapt to the different soil, has to support the above ground. So this one went from here to here, and this one is going to have a way more difficult time to establish and survive. And that's why we have something called transplant shock or diebacks, because when you have this amount of roots and go to this amount of roots, of course this above ground is going to suffer. And this study is an example. I always said to people, be very careful. I would rather buy the bare roots from the nursery. I tell them I don't want a burlap basket. I want to dig up the whole thing and then transplant them. Yes, this one became more cumbersome, and it's not easy to transport, and it's not easy. You have to protect them by the blankets or moisture to not have those roots. But this much is much better chance to survive and actually thrive in your environment. So again, that's what science shows us. That having all of the roots have a way better chance of survival than the basket and burlap. So the next thing what you have to look if you buy the potted material is we call root circling. So if you take this pot and you look around, if you see on the bottom of the pot small roots are coming out, do not buy the trees or shrub, because when you pull this out, this little tree out, you may end up with this we call root circling. And if you see that anywhere when you pull it out and see this root circle, don't buy it. Don't buy it at all, because this root circle is going to stay like this. Doesn't matter how much you cut and remove many of them. Most likely they're going to stay, and this is how they look like in real life. Or once people, used to buy the potted material like this, and they just dig up exactly the same hole and they plant it into the new hole. After so many years, this is what you end up. most of those trees don't thrive. Most of those trees don't have a longevity. Most of those trees actually don't survive at all. So the biggest thing buying the potted material is, if you see the something like this, don't buy it, put it back. And if you have a way less than this, what you might do, you take this and wash out all of the soil. Look for the crossing of those little roots. You might do some of the pruning, even removing 20% of the roots, and then you plant them as a bare root. So you really have to pay attention to the root circling when you're buying the potted material. And again, one of the best indicator, if you go here and you see on the bottom, there's a little holes with the drainage. If you see the roots coming out, don't even touch it. If you can, and ask in the store to pull this out to see how the roots look like. That's the best thing you can do. So just be very careful. So how much the burlap and basket, they have a negative side is the removal of the huge amount of roots. This one, if you don't pay attention, you might end up with the root circling, and again, that's not what you want to buy. That's not what you want to plant whatsoever. Doesn't matter, is it tree or shrub. So again, pay attention to the root circling. The next thing, you have to look above ground. So if you see, guys, anywhere in the small little tree that the branches are crossing, look how much damages is there. If you see any tree that have two leaders, like in V shape or this on the right side, don't buy them. It has to be a one leader, and the branches are distributed evenly. Look for any damages on the trunk, on the branches, or anything like that they damage during the transportation or during the hail or something like that. Because again, if you have a damaged bark, a damaged thing, you're going to inherit some of the potential for the diseases and insects to come in. Proper branch structure, again, rubbing, crossing, broken, anything like that, you have to remove. And the branch distributed evenly with the wide angles, with no included bark, and I'm going to show you in next slide. That's what you want. That this year growth is evident. So when you look into the planting stock, you have to see that this year growth. You have to see that soft a new growth of the spruce or pine, or new growth of the leaves of this year. If you don't have a growth of this year, don't buy it. And if it's some of the visible damages of the growth or very small growth, again, don't buy it. Because those are potted material or the burlap and basket, they grow this year. They're still growing as we speak. So if they don't have that, again, therefore the roots are damaged. Roots are suffering, either drought or something like that. Again, you don't need to buy that. So pay attention for some of those defects. If you see any diseases or any insects, again, don't buy it, don't touch it. In some cases with disease, you don't want to bring disease to your yard that can spread it to your already trees that you're existing. So be very careful with some of that. And again, no hail damage. So look for those defects. You don't want to buy, even though it's an 80% discount, you better walk away and don't buy something that have lots of defects, because you can't fix them, many of them, and you inherit the problem. In some cases, in diseases, you might bring the problem to your yard, to your property. So just look for those defects. Here is one of the prime example of the good looking, we call caliper tree. And what we are looking here, you have this leader that grows from the bottom to all the way to the top. You have evenly distributed branches that is going in all different 360 directions. This is already 3 years old. All of those lower suckers or sprouts should have been removed. There's a little bit messiness here that should have been, again, pruned. But overall, you can see the perfect shaped tree with a strong leader and a strong, wide, good angle branches. Same thing with this is a silver maple. Again, unfortunately, you can't see because of the leaves, but again, you can go straight line with a nice leader, nice branches, evenly distributed all around. First 5 feet are clear, very good tree. This is a linden tree. Again, same thing. You can see all the way how leader goes. Nice distributed branches. Lower branches are wide. It's kind of pyramidal shape in that sense. And if the leaves fell off, you're going to see the nice and proper structure. That's what you're looking for. Doesn't matter if it's small little tree on the pot or the big caliper trees. Look for that structure. Look that you have a central leader. Look that you have a evenly distributed branches. Look for the angle of the branches, that you don't have two leaders, that you don't have a weak branches, that you don't have a broken branches. That's what you need to look for any possible defects, because especially if you buy the burlap and basket, you're paying $300, $400. Buy the tree that has a defects. Don't buy that. The other thing, once you get the trees and decide, you need to decide where to plant. This is a very common things all over the Alberta, and I've seen pretty much every corner of Alberta that people plant a perfectly good tree on the wrong spot. And I tried to figure out, they always said, what's the purpose of that? People plant the tree very close to the structure, like this big tree close to the home or something like that. You're gonna have nothing but mistakes, nothing but the troubles, nothing but the problems. This is one, again, Swedish aspen straight next to the building. The branches are hitting the eaves throughs and hitting the roof and making them problems. Trees got heated by the buildings. The lifespan of this tree is greatly reduced. And I said, what's the purpose of putting this tree? This tree could have be put here or totally avoided, not to put that big tree in the first place, put some of the shrubs and still provide the beauty and the shelter. Same thing, again, that's lots of people use this Swedish aspen, Colburn aspen. This is a fitness center in Edmonton. It's like a foot away from the building. Not enough asphalt all over the place. Heat from the wall during the summertime, like what we have this summer, is killing those trees. It's absolutely killing. And I actually, this is a picture 2 years ago. Now when I go there, probably 70% of those trees are dead. And the same thing here, planted this tree close to this corner. Signs are, we define the purpose of the sign, the name of the building. So what's the point of putting those trees? The other thing, especially in rural area around the shelter belts, lots of people planted the trees under the power lines, and they got topped and removed the top to keep the power line clear. Again, beautiful trees that you plant in your shelter belt and then hit the power line, and then you have to cut and damage those trees. Again, here is on the bottom a good example. There's a plenty of trees and shrubs that you can plant under the power line that will never ever reach power lines and still perform the function of the shelter belts or protection in that sense. So there's a plenty, but again, when people plant the trees, they don't look above. They don't look below. They don't pay attention on some of the details. The other one, again, close to the structure. This is even interesting in close to Edmonton Library, and it's a Russian olive. And half of this tree, as you can see, is growing over the cement wall and still doing okay. I always said Russian olive is indestructible species. It grows anywhere. But it was a mind-boggling to me to see this. So, and they were doing renovation of the site. They cut this Russian olive, and it's literally half of the tree was growing over the wall. The other common mistakes is the planting some trees that has a very extensive root system, like a willows, like a poplar, like even elm, and over the pathways, over the surface area that uses the pathways, the roads, or something like that. And again, you got this problem that is destroying your pathways. And trees suffer immensely to growing under this. So you have to little pay attention. The other one is the close to the sewage system and water and sewage system. And I always said to people, it's not the trees that goes into the sewer system. It's your sewer system. Usually have cracks and breaking, and that's where the roots feel where the water and nutrients are, and that's why they go into your sewer system. It's not the roots of the tree that are smashing the pipes or anything like that. No, they got cracked, they got leaking, they got all kind of damages over the period of time. Roots just follow where is the water, where the nutrients are. So please pay attention to where you plant these trees. Where is the best way to plant the trees when you bring it to your property, and plan ahead before you purchase. The other thing what you might look is, again, look what's the neighboring tree looks like when the trees are big. Lots of people buy the small tree and not realizing that one day those trees going to be big, and that can create lots of problems in that sense. For the tree selection, as I said, look for the soil, look for the heights, look for the location where it is. Distances, visit already established sheltervelds or mature trees where it's planted. Plant as many as possible different tree species and shrubs. In your area, again, for some of the area, if you close the roads or your driveways, for that matter of fact, or you have along the boulevard, there is always issue with the salt. There's lots of salt used for the de-icing in Alberta. Around 7 tons of sodium is used per 1 mile in Alberta for the de-icing. So if you have a potential salt issues, there is some of the tree species that and shrub species that you might be able to plant. Some of them are extremely invasive, such a carragana, such a Russian olive, which I strongly suggest to not plant unless you must. But there is plenty of other choices that you can plant trees and shrubs in the area where is high sodium levels. This is one of the tools that I use on every almost daily basis that all of the tree nursery in Alberta have. If you want to select what trees you want to buy, it's called Plant Search Tools. This one is from Eagle Lake Nursery in southern Alberta, and this is not endorsement of this nursery. Most of the tree nurseries do have this software that you can pick. Do you want a trees? Do you want evergreen shrub? Do you want a hedge? Do you want a roses? Do you want a succulent, shrubs, and everything else? Then you have choices of the heights. Then you have choices of the soil. Then you have choices of the foliage color. You want a trees, you want evergreen, flowering trees, on. And you click that search button. It's going to give you a list of the tree species that according to your requirements. And then you can read about it and you say, okay, yeah, this fit, I like it, or I don't have this type of soil, or I don't have this or something like that. But it's incredible tool. It's very useful tool to choose your tree species. And again, it's available for most of the tree nursery. They have these tools. It's called Plant Search Tools, and this one is just from Eagle Lake Tree Nursery. The tree forms are extremely important. Again, it's a matter of space. How much space do you have to plant some of those trees? And each of the trees has a different shapes and tree forms. And again, when they grow, sometimes they said it's going to be when they grow only 20 feet wide. Well, if you have a good soil and good moisture and good everything, it's going to be 25, 30 feet wide. So those are just general recommendations of the height, on the width, on the growth, but boils down to your soil, to your nutrients, and to the watering, and space available, and competition. So when they said tree is going to be, again, 40 feet tall, well, if you have a good soil and everything else is going to be 60 feet tall. If you don't have, you might have a 20 feet tall. But those are just some general description of the tree. So be conscious about that. And again, all of those are different shapes and forms are very important when you're choosing some of the trees. Now, the most important thing is the planting of your trees. And again, I show this slide over and over. And it's the biggest thing. If you planted a potted material, regardless of its size, always plant it 3 or 4 times wider than container. Again, you might remove you take the container, you disturb all of the soil. Actually, I would wash away that soil, build a slope, siding slope that you can have. And the biggest thing is where is the junction between the roots and the trunk. That's the depth that you will plant it. Same thing apply for the caliper trees. Here is in real life example. Again, planting hole. This is should be even bigger, 2 or 3 times bigger in this. And this in particular case is 2 times. This is what you pay attention. It's called root collar. And this root collar is where is the root starts, where is this gentleman finger, where the trunk starts. That's the depth. That's this blue line. That's what it is. That's the depth that you're going to plant. your trees. Again, root inspection. If you see something like this, you might do some of the pruning, remove some of those circling the roots, remove the roots that are crossing, and literally wash away all of this soil in the pot. You wash that away to just inspect the roots. And the best way you do that, you put that into wheelbarrow and just wash it. And once you wash it, you take that water together with this material and put back in the hole. Again, in this particular case, again, try to planting hole. It's 2 or 3 times wider, and they're washing away the soil to try to look at how the roots look like. And then you do the backfilling. Again, you do not add any amendments. Whatever soil you dig up from here, you put it back. And if you have some really bad soil, you might add no more than 10% of the or 15% of the good soil, but mixed up with the native soil. Take this soil that was dug out and add more 10% of the good soil, mix them up together. Don't try to put all of the good soil here, because if you put, roots is going to only stay in this good soil. They will never ever go into the neighboring soil, because they don't need to, because oh, I have everything what I need here. I don't need to. You don't want that. You want to encourage the roots of this tree go into this native soil, and you do the proper backfilling, and then you do the mulching. And I'm going to talk about mulching as well. Watering right away. Again, when you're doing this process, either with a potted material, you wash away all of the soil to inspect the roots. You're going to have a water there, and again, if you have a whatever in the pot, bigger pot or wheelbarrow, you keep that good soil. You prune some of the roots up to 20%, properly, height and plant, and take that all of the soil and the water, put it back, and that would be again initial water to use. What type of soil? If you have a clay, don't overwater. You can drown your trees and the roots if you put too much. And the best way, sometimes what I do, you take in the hole like this. Night before I plant the tree, I put the water in this hole, okay, and see what's going to happen. So I put the water, let's say 6 o'clock or whatever, 5 o'clock, and I come next day 6 o'clock to see, or maybe 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and go in the night, go in the morning to see how much water is here left. Is there still more water, or all of the water is gone? If you have lots of water still standing there, you have a heavy clay. That means, oh, this is how much water I really need to water. If you have lots of sand, that water will be gone in a relatively quick, short period of time. So again, the best way to inspect what kind of soil you have is dig up the hole, put the water inside to see how long that water is going to stay. And that will be also indication for the future, how much you need to water. I always said, I put, let's say, 5 gallons of water into this and stay to this, let's say, level. And I was watching how long that water is going to stay, how long it's going to go. So when I water this tree in the fall, oh, I don't need to put 5 gallons. I only maybe 20 gallons. I only need to put 3 gallons, 4 gallons, 5 gallons. Again, that's one of the, also you do the testing. Water quality, again, test your water for salinity. Make sure that there is no sodium in your water. Again, absolutely water trees after the plant. If you have irrigation, good. If you don't, hand watering. Again, water trees not close to the trunk. So when you plant this tree, don't water, put a hose here. No, put a hose on the furthest edges of this hole. So around here, that's where you put your slow dripping hose that is going to water. Do not put your hose with the water dripping here next to the trunk. You don't want that. You want to further away, that these roots will, again, seeking the water, is going to go toward to outside and try to engage into the native soil. So that's one of the things you want to do, the watering. So depending on the fall, if you have lots of water in the fall, you don't need to water too much. If you still keep drought, keep going, which last year we have a lots of dry months, September and October, you must water those trees before the freezing, and that's one of the things you must do. Again, how much? Again, this is a general rule. If you planted a 2-inch caliper tree trunk, and again, this is for established, you probably go 2 or 3 gallons. And or if you have a 4-inch, 4 to 6 gallons you put initial when they planted. So this is just general rules. You know, I've looked for the research and studies in North America and in Europe, matter of fact, in Australia. There is no really scientific paper that tells you how much water you need to water the trees, because each tree is so different, each soil is so different, each situation is so different. Those are just some of the rules. And again, I found this from University of Minnesota. And again, those are just rule of thumb. The best way is, again, go back to this hole and you test, you put a 5 gallon of water, how quickly that is going to stay or go. If you go quickly, you put another 5 gallon, and again, you test how quickly stay or go. That's probably the best way before you, when you plant the trees, you know, you test how much water your soil can hold. Again, soak them, don't flood them, water them further away from the trunk. So if you put watering, this is where I do watering my trees, around this wood mulch or close to the edge of the wood mulch, and that's where I would water. This was put in the spring to spring watering and slowly dripping it further away again, because it's just they cannot put this bag here, so they have to tie to the tree trunk. But again, the best way is on the edges. That's where you want to water to encourage the roots go into the native soil. In the big trees, it's applied the same thing we call drip line. Again, don't water close to the trunk. Water where the roots of those trees are further away from the trunk, and you want to feed and water those roots, small, tiny little roots that are on the top 3 inches of the surface of the soil. That's what you need to water, and again, that's where we call the watering zone. Mulching is, to me, I cannot stress enough how much this is important for the trees. If this is all of those trees are actually planted in late in fall, every single of them. This was in I think this was in Stettler or something. No, this was in Stettler. Again, planted in the springtime. But again, regardless what it is, you do the mulching. Usually go 2 to 4 inches. Sometimes I said go with the 6 inches. The only thing what you need to remember with the mulch, do not put the mulch close to the tree trunk. Keep them away 6 inches or 12 inches away from the trunk. Create this like a donuts. Center is empty, side is covered with the mulch. Mulch is the one that is going to protect your newly planted trees and the roots. So what does mulch does? This is a caliper tree, burlap basket. This is the width of that burlap basket. And this mulch is protecting that roots until they start moving to the native soil and protecting the, and adopt to the environment. But the mulch is literally protecting the roots from the cold air coming in. It's in a dry year, what we have right now is provide lots of moisture to that roots, and of course reduce the competition from the weeds. And that's why I always say mulch is your best friend when you plant the caliper trees, when you plant the trees in the fall. Generally speaking, regardless when you plant the trees, mulch is definitely best friend for the any tree established. So what is the best mulch? You're gonna find in the store. You can buy the bark. You can buy the Arborist wood chips. That's probably the best one you can buy. It's if you just buy the bark doesn't have a nutrients, and the bark does keep the moisture. It does keep the weeds out, bark mulch, but doesn't have a lots of nutrients. We call Arborist wood chips, which is this one, is you take a whole tree and chip it and put over that. This wood chips is provide the moisture and everything else, but also provide the nutrients. Some people want to use the straw. You can do that, but be careful with the straw because of the herbicide residues in the straw. And straw, generally speaking, does not provide the nutrients nearly or very little compared to the arborist wood chips. Stone and rocks to provide no nutrients whatsoever. In some cases, in your county, if you put the rocks close to these trees during the heat waves, what we experience right now, that rocks is so hot that is literally in some cases cooking the tree bark because of the reflection of the heat and radiation from the rocks. So I, generally speaking, don't recommend to have a rocks on your as a part of the mulch, but again, some people prefer, because rocks really doesn't provide any nutrients. They don't keep the moisture longer, and they weeds, generally speaking, eventually go through as well. So if you anything, put we call arborist wood chips. That's the best thing you can do to your trees. And again, this is just example of the arborist, which is basically what it is. If you have a tree that is alive, and you just chip them in the various sizes, and that's include the branches, that's include the bark, that's include the wood, everything, and that's what we call arborist wood chips. As I said, I mentioned the benefits of the wood chips. There is many of them. As I said, rocks and plastic don't provide any nutrients to the soil or plants. It's definitely to protect the roots from the cold air and freezing rain. Helps to the moisture and water, and especially during the fall, prevent the erosion, the compaction, moderate the temperature, and reduce the root stress. So there's so many benefits that wood chips provide. And again, for the fall planting is I always say, it's a must. So don't plant the trees if you don't have a plan for putting the wood chips. What also you might have in the fall as the winter is coming, you planted all of those trees nicely and everything else, and then deer and rodents and all kind of things is going to come after your trees, either during the winter or next spring. I planted the Evans tree in front of my house, and I have lots of rabbits in my neighborhood, and I put a mesh wire all the way, and the rabbits coming, climbing on the snow and try to chew my bark, my trees. But again, my mesh is protecting on that. If you have something like this, again, try to protect from any griddling, any animal damage of the bark, because especially those are newly planted trees, the bark is very soft. And ungulates and wolves and mice and all other things, they will eat that soft bark, and once they start chewing it, they basically kill the trees. This one on the right corner is we call the tree guard. The purpose of this little black guard is to avoid the damage of the root collar by the weed whacker or lawnmower, which is, I was in other day in one town doing the tree inventory in Alberta. 85% of the trees in that town is damaged by the weed whacker, and that create probably increase the actually mortality by 40%. Plus, in the long run, that's where the fungi comes in and damage this tree and basically kill the tree. So if you have a big caliper tree that you planted and you still want to do the controlling, cutting the grass, put at least this one. The best way to avoid any damage to the trunk is chips. So if you have here, there's no lawnmower coming to the trees. There is no weed whackers coming to this tree. So if you don't go with the mulch, but you still want to cut the grass around, please put this plastic guard. It's just a guard around the trunk, and do the operation of the cutting the grass. In many animals, if you have a wildlife with, again, moose, deer, that might come to your property, electrical fence, dogs that try to scare them off, because when you plant a tree like this, they will come. They will sense the smell of the young planted tree that is in good shape and full of nutrients, and they will come browse and eat your newly planted trees. Especially if you have a fruit trees, they will come, no doubt about that. Staking. there is no need for staking. Now, because you folks are in Stettler, you might get some of the strong winds. And if your tree is only one tree totally exposed to the wind, you might do the staking. And what you do if you plant the caliper trees, this is where the hole is. You put a stake, and then you put a wire, and around the wire you take a plastic, like a little hose that you do, and try not to damage this. Whereas the sad part, people do this staking and they totally forgot about this one. And so what this create is this situation that the wire, guy wire, and the plastic is growing inside the tree. And in the long run, this was going to happen. I've seen so many trees with wires around the tree, and literally griddle tree. This tree is planted. This is what really kind of make me mad. Is the landscape company planted the tree in the city of Edmonton property, and they put this really crappy staking, and it's gonna grow inside. And this tree to cost as myself to the city is probably between $800 or $1,000, and they already didn't do a proper job, and it's already growing inside of the trees. And it's absolutely disgrace to do something like this. So don't do this to your tree if you do the staking. As I said, if you have a trees in your yard in town of Stettler or your farm and protect it from the wind and everything else, do not do the staking. Do the proper planting. Again, the reason for some of the staking, because in the past people didn't plant properly and the tree was leaning and blowing down or something like that. And also why city or some of the towns do the staking, because they don't want to crew coming with a lawnmower and damage the tree. And also sometimes they put a blue color or green color on the stake to know how many years they've been watering this tree. But generally speaking, in your farm, if it's protected all around, in your yard, if it's protected all around, do not put the staking. Do the proper planting. I got in old folks home in Red Deer, and they purchased lots of trees, and one manager said, no, I want a stake. I said, no. And literally 3 weeks later, they got quite a bit wind. None of the trees fall. None of the trees did any movement if you do the proper planting. Do the proper planting, you're not going to have a problem with, you don't need them for the stake, unless it's totally open and in the middle of the area that has lots of wind. Then you might do the staking, but do not, if you put the stakes, do not keep them more than 2 or 3 years. That's it. After 3 years, they have to go. You have to teach the trees to stand alone, because the staking also what does, it's helping trees, not to adapt to the environment. You want to have a roots to really stand on their own. And again, that's, I said, after 3 years, for sure, remove the stakes. And especially don't leave something like this or something like this. Remove them. Your trees has to be as in natural forest or anywhere else, tree has to stand on their own. So again, no need, unless some rare cases that you might need, but remove them after the 3 years. So to reiterate everything else, for the fall tree planting, you're going to plant a potted or burlap in basket. If you can, and if you go now in the nursery, instead of them to putting the burlap in basket, which is lots of hard work for the nursery man to do that, tell them to basically to just dig up the tree with all of the roots. Try to get this, folks, if you can, from the nursery. Try to get this. If you tell them, I want you the guys dig this up. I don't want to cut with the spade and put them burlap in basket. I want this. That's probably the best thing you can do. Okay. So if you got in potted material, make sure you don't have any root bounding or root circling. Do not plant the trees with the root circling whatsoever. Inspect the trees. You will have now in Rona's or Home Depots or Canadian Tire or Home Hardware, whatever you guys have in your heck of the woods, store. that you have a lots of discount, just inspect. It's like a 2-minute inspection. Look for the roots, look for the damaged branches, look for the damaged trunk, and look for the insect and disease, especially diseases. Insects in some, you can recognize them, but with diseases, if you bring some diseases, I've seen that 2 years ago, Home Depot, I think, were selling some of the sugar cherries, and there was like 4 black knots on the trees. I called them. I said, "This is reject. Don't allow it, sell this." And they did. They acted right away. I don't know how they missed that. But, so make sure that you don't have any diseases. Make sure that you have that right tree, right place. Do not in a hurry plant the trees and then down inherit all of the problems. Problems with power line, problems with view, problems with sidewalks, problem with some of the infrastructure that you have. You don't want that. I always said there is no. I told the landscape architects there is no need ever to plant a tree right next to any building. None. Plant the tree further away from the building. You can plant a small tree. The only thing close to any building, you can plant some small shrubs. But there's no need to put a Swedish aspen next to the building or whatever place. There's absolutely none. You're going to have nothing but the trouble. Again, the plant the trees properly. I show you in this slide how to do it, and I will repeat over and over in my talk to the Stettler County. That, again, there's 2 wonderful videos that you can look into Arbor Day, how to plant the trees properly. It's relatively easy to do that. Water them. As I said, if you wash away the soil from the trees that you buy in the wheelbarrow, put that water back. The most important thing, once you dig up the hole, put water in the hole to see how quickly water will stay or go. That will give you the best indication for the future how much water your tree really needs. If you take a 5-gallon of the water and put in the hole and gone in 2 minutes, you have a very sandy soil. And you don't plant a spruce in that sandy soil, you plant a pine. You plant a species that can handle the sandy soil. If you put a 5-gallon of water in the heavy clay, that water is going to stay for a couple of hours and sometimes 24 hours. Then it gives you indication when you water the other trees, do not put too much water. Okay. Chips, the best thing you can do to your trees. Staking, you don't need to. I know in Stettler, I know enough, there's lots of wind in your area, but if you plant now fall trees, most of the time you're going to have a area that is sheltered or protected. There's no need for staking. If you do have a, let's say, new acreage and you want to plant the caliper trees around your property and you do have wind, you might consider staking. Number one, do the proper planting. Then you might consider staking for a year or 2. For sure, year 3, you have to remove that stakes. That tree has to stay on its own. And the last but not least, avoid any fertilizer. Do not put any fertilizer now in the fall whatsoever when you plant. Don't put a bone meal. Don't put anything. Just straight do the transplanting. If you have to put a soil, do not put more than 10-15% of the good soil, but mixed it up soil. Don't put a good soil around the roots, and because the roots is never going to leave that good soil. What you want to do is mix them up with a native soil. And that would be for fall planting. So where is my friend? Quinton is there.
I'm here.
Good.
Let me, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can
see. I have to stop sharing. Okay, here you go, Quinton.
There we go. Can you see that?
So far I can't see anything. I see yourself. You start sharing. Press on the bottom share screen. Green button. Here you go.
All right. Can you see?
Yep.
Talking with trees. Excellent. It's taken me a bit to learn this, but I'm getting there. All right, guys, here's our next 5 webinars. August 31st at 10 o'clock, September 7 at 10 o'clock, September 14 at 1 o'clock, September 21 at 10 o'clock, and September 28 at 1 o'clock. Guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to text me, email me, shoot me a message on Facebook, however you want to get it there. If you follow us live on Zoom, you can type your question in. The idea is to get this as much of a conversation as it is an instructional video to you guys, so we can get to know some of the issues maybe I'm not hearing about locally. But yeah, and there's my contact info. Also, thank you very much. As always, it's been great. I know we learned so much. So little time, we could learn more, but you got to limit it somehow, I guess.
Well, it's one step at a time. You know, Quinton, I noticed in your logo of the county that you guys have a tree over there.
Yes,
oil and gas, and that was interesting. I never noticed about that.
1 tree, 1 derrick, and a couple cows.
Yes. No, as I said, Quinton, I hope you local folks will come up with some of the questions and ideas, and you know, some of the things that they would like to hear. What else topics they would like to hear from myself.
Yeah.
We'll hopefully get more interest into this. So, but it's always my pleasure. And again, it's one step at a time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
We can do.
So I guess that's all for this one. Our next one will be spring tree planting and maintenance.
Yes, it's gonna be totally reversed from the fall tree planting. There's lots of other things that you have to pay attention for the spring, and one of the biggest thing is that you're dealing with the smaller stock. You have way more choices. You need to do better site preparation.
That's
you
right.
have to do the actually matter of fact site preparation for the spring planting, compared to the fall planting that you generally speaking don't need any site prep, and you plant the trees in that sense. And that's what probably next topic is going to be.
Perfect.
Okay, Quinton.
Thank you very much, Tulsa, for your time. Anyone who's been following us or looking at us later on, thank you very much for following along.